Now, while the New York Mets have had their solid share of closers during the regular season, you were always waiting for that other foot to drop when it came to the blown saves come to the postseason, as the New York Mets have struggled with guys like Armando Benitez, Mel Rojas, Braden Looper, Francisco Rodriguez, Armando Benitez, you name them. Jerry's Familia. There's a lot of New York Mets closers that have been here that have flashed a lot of potential in the regular season, but when it came down to crunch time during the postseason, they always seem to come up short. And there's nothing unfamiliar with the current closer of the New York Mets, who was traded by the Seattle Mariners to New York back in 2019 in the controversial trade by then general manager Brodie Van Wagenen, when he traded highly regarded prospect Jarred Kelenic to the New York Mets, from the New York Mets to the Seattle Mariners for Edwin Diaz, and at the time Robinson Cano, who has recently just been DFA'd, designated for assignment this past season, earlier on during the 2022 season. But Edwin Diaz seems to be a guy who has struggled mightily since his arrival in New York, but he seems to be a guy that might have gotten a second chance in the big city, as he's putting up some of the best numbers he's ever put up in his career, and he's now emerged as the best closer in Major League Baseball. And you have to give kudos to this guy over his career. And his 7-year career, he has a WAR of 9.9, and he has 16 wins and 29 losses with a career ERA of 2.99 and 394 games pitched as a closer. He has 211 saves with 388 innings pitched, 638 strikeouts, and a whip above 1 with 1.078. So those are solid career numbers. Obviously, the win-loss projection is a little bit low. Saves are not terrible. But you have to give credit to Edwin Diaz. Not a lot of players that play in New York and start off very rough find a way to bounce back. And I'm going to give credit to what I was listening to a little bit earlier today that inspired me to make this video. Mark Malusis on WFAN talking about Edwin Diaz, when he was mentioning about how Edwin Diaz is just one of those few players that sort of got a second chance, and he was able to bounce back after tons and tons of backlash from the fan base, from the media, about him not being able to get the job done in New York, that he's been a failure since he got traded over here from Seattle back in 2019. And you got to give credit to a guy like Edwin Diaz, who at 20 years old has found a way to regain his form that he had back in his Seattle days. And he's pitched to an incredibly effective numbers for the New York Mets. As this year so far in 2022, he has pitched to a 2.8 WAR with 3 wins and 1 loss. He has a 1.40 ERA. That's impressive in 51 games. He has no games saved, but he has 28 saves total. He has no games started, but he has 28 games saved so far in 51 innings pitched with 99 strikeouts in those 51 games. That's impressive. And a whip just slightly under 1 at .916. You have to give credit to a guy like Edwin Diaz. Like I mentioned, not a lot of players bounce back in the New York media under the bright lights from all the scrutiny that this guy has picked up over the years, as he was struggling mightily in the first few years he was here in New York. I mean, you could just look at some of the numbers. In 2019, his first year here, he was 2-7 with a 222 winning percentage, with a 5.59 ERA, 66 games. He had almost a 6 ERA in 66 games in 2019. Back in 2020. His win-loss record was a little bit better. He was 2-1. His ERA actually went back down to 1.75, so he was able to bounce back after horrific 2019. And back in 26, that was of course the COVID year season in 19 games that he played. Now going back to 2021, last year he once again struggled again with a 5-6 record. He had a 3.45 ERA. He had, in 63 games, he had 51 saves, but he had many saves blown. So Edwin Diaz has had a very, very rocky time here in New York with the Mets. It's pretty much been like a seesaw. He's been a seesaw pretty much since his arrival. In 2019, he was bad, so the seesaw was one side down. 2020, he managed to bounce back, seaside back up. 2021, it just went right back down again. Seaside back down. And now this year, he's found a way to bounce back, but incredibly much better than he did in 2021 and before that. Seaside all the way up and more. Now, of course, when it comes to the New York Mets and it comes to the closer position, it's always going to come down to what are you going to do when the postseason comes around. And as great as Edwin Diaz has been, he's been easily the best closer so far in baseball with the numbers he's been putting up. As I mentioned before, a 3-1 record and 51 games pitched, a 1.40 ERA with 41 saves. 28 saves. And this guy has just pitched in 51 innings. This guy has just pitched unbelievable since he's been out there for the New York Mets this year. He's easily been the best closer so far in the Major League Baseball. But as we all know, especially for a team with the high aspects that the New York Mets have, is they're currently right now 82 and 46. They are 36 games above 500 with a 641 winning percentage at the moment, and they have currently a 3-game lead in the National League East over the Atlanta Braves for the divisional win. So they're 36 games above 500. Edwin Diaz is pitching fantastic, but with the New York Mets now, it's championship or bust. So Edwin Diaz has got to be a guy that's got to carry over that success he has in the regular season and be able to continue it when we get to the postseason coming late in October, early November. So you have to see how Edwin Diaz is going to be able to pitch them when October rolls around, if he's going to be able to carry over that success he's had from the regular season over the postseason. We just hope he can, and we just hope he's not going to be part of that. We just hope as New York Met fans, he's not going to carry over the legacy of past New York Mets closers, and he's just going to be a guy that's going to struggle when it comes down to the clutch times, like an Armando Benitez, like a Jeurys Familia, like a Frankie Rodriguez, like a Mel Rojas, like a Braden Looper. Any of these guys, Dwaner Sanchez. You could name a bunch of Mets former closers that have been struggling when it came to the postseason. You just got to hope that this guy can turn it around. And we just got to see what's going to happen with the new... Billy Wagner is another one. We just got to see how Edwin Diaz is going to do going into the rest of the season, but especially how he's going to pitch when the postseason comes around. So that's just my little video I wanted to make about Edwin Diaz. I want to give credit to him as a guy that had a lot of scrutiny on him throughout this season and since in his tenure with the New York Mets, and he's managed to bounce back and had himself a pretty effective career with the New York Mets so far. So kudos to him. Have to see how he's going to be able to build off of it going into the rest of this regular season, heading into the postseason, if he's going to be able to pitch to the type of level he has during this regular season. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below. And if you guys enjoy the content, subscribe to NYG Jeffrey T3285 for more breaking news updates, chatter, roster and injury updates concerning the New York Mets, as well as the New York Giants, Brooklyn Nets, WWE Wrestling, and as well as some food for thought. Turn on the bell for notifications on when the next New York Mets short or video is going to drop on the channel. And let me know in the comments section what you think and how you feel about Edwin Diaz's performance so far this year. If you think it's just a one-year mirage, if you think he's going to be able to carry over in the postseason, or if you think that he's truly turned it around and he's going to be the type of closer for the New York Mets going forward that we all expect. And of course, as we should know, he's a free agent after this year, so he's going to get a big-time contract after this year, either from the New York Mets or from another team. So you have to think about that too. Edwin Diaz is in his walk year right now, and you have to wonder what type of contract he's going to get from the Mets or on the free agent market if in fact the Mets decide to move on from him. So I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Sunday afternoon. Take it easy and let's go New York Mets. You got to believe in those New York Mets and those boys from Queens.